So, I guess this Buena Vista can take as long as I want to send out venues and news for the next for these special releases of Turning Red, Soul, and Luca. But what the heck? Been wanting to do this video ever since the start of streaming, so it's gonna be now or never for me. So, once I did with Turning Red and Lightyear here previously, here's another video detailing another Pixar hit. It's one I've been eager to talk about for a very long time. So let's address how Elemental captures budding relationships and family dynamics. So let's get this started. One of the many surprises of last year, and then some in particular, was how this film managed to overcome the initial hurdle of its underwhelming opening, at which point a lot of people, whether or not they were professionally a prognosticating on its gross, or just some podcasters from Norway, after it underperformed The Flash initially, were telling them to pack it in. And of course, they said no, we think there was a shot, so they kept at it. And against the odds, it worked. With a final gross of nearly $500 million worldwide on a $20 million budget, which is more than The Flash, but also the first Toy Story and the first Cars before inflation. And it shows that the idea of a film finding its audience has not gone away. The methods of which it happens have merely evolved. And even though many higher ups initially were concerned about the impact that D Plus had on their films, they did, of course, express interest in developing this universe further, which I'd be open to for a reason I'm about to get into. So let's officially begin this. From the very first shots of the film, you can definitely see how the world building impacts the story and how each of the elements came to the city in waves. Waves, be they air, earth, water, and fire, here with the names of our female lead Ember being romanized as Bernie and Cinder respectively. Hey, and how each specific element has their own specific way of doing things, and with the city serving as like a sort of hub, influenced by a number of different settings, which the most obvious ones I saw were, of course, most of the East Asian countries that is revolving director Peter Sohn's background, as well as the stuff that would not be far from the real world Emeryville, California, where Pixar is set. With the aqueduct and the shipyards being a very vital plot, which I'll get into in a while, on how several scenes and lines of dialogue are actually verbatim to his experience, which definitely helps illustrate how personal film this is for him. Given how that's parts where Bernie expressed regret for never reconciling with his father before they left Element City. That wasn't just as meant for dramatic storytelling, that actually happened to Peter in real life. So there's that. Even with the discourse about whether or not these kind of movies should have villains, I would argue there are specific cases where not having one can actually benefit the story, such as, and this movie is a key example of that. That's where the conflict comes, as it often does, from the simple ups and downs of day-to-day life, and also how the different groups of people can often end up having barriers that they don't always intend just because of who they are. The Vivisteria sequence is a key example of that. I definitely just got through watching the scene at the Academy and how it was described and how effective it was at not having dialogue. Agamemnon and how Ember never got a chance to see the flower in its prime before the Arboretum got flooded in, and using Fern, I just showed you there how basically a desk jockey, a figuring literally a bit too heated over what's actually a pretty simple clerical mistake to be corrected. I mean, even the earlier scene is clear that Wade doesn't want to have to cite the fireplace for being structurally unsound. But it's clear he's just doing his job, and helps that the voiceovers of these characters really sell it, especially with just like how Joe Pera as Fern manages to fit the firm but droll nature of that kind of line of work. I mean, I have been watching Joe Pera Talks to You as well. Hell, some nights. It's a very soothing voice, so but there's also still plenty to address in how these factors also connect even further. As one would expect from Pixar at this point in their history, the film is a visual marvel, and not just for obvious set pieces like the city itself, the way each character moves and is designed, the way things like fabrics are tied to each character, and how things like flame, airstreams, plants, and fluids but also how it's paired with sound, like with the score, especially by Thomas Newman, who is a composer for a few of the films, actually adds some specific theming, and using a variety of wind instruments, string instruments, and some even segments electronic music to create a unique soundscape. And as I mentioned, the voice casting also is quite spot on having people feel multitude of emotions, and also the color palettes definitely they mesh well together. I mean, in particular, a scene where maybe there's more to the relationship than they first let on, with Ember burning some of the incense and Wade using some of the light refracted in his body to who who light the incense himself. Just shows how far things have come since the first Toy Story, since the magnifying glass scene with Sid, and then Woody subsequently dunking his head in the bowl of milk to cool himself off. Yeah. One of the key fixtures of any film they've done is to keep the story focused on, well, the story and the characters and how the journey plays out, and the many twists and turns that unfold this course in which it had to contain everything from a burst pipe to a gap in the aqueduct, like where the ships go by, but also a more personal level that weighed a lot of his character stems from the fact that he is still coming to terms with the loss of his father and the fact they never reconciled before he died. I mean, and how why he's so openly emotional, but also is trying his best to maintain order as well. Though they do short runs in the family, he with living with his other relatives. It was like his aunt and uncle, his old lady, and his cousin Lake and their partner Ghibli. May be a traditional relationship, but I support it. Likewise, Ember's path actually ends up like a lot of ones I've dealt with, where do you want to follow the path laid forth by your family, or do you want to forge your own? I mean, is your future and take up a family business, or or starting your own artistic journey. We find out that she's really skilled at glasswork, or not just when fixing like the windows and glass casing in the fireplace, but just again the art of Vivisteria and tempering it as well. And also more supporting roles also tend to balance pretty well, like Claude trying and failing to who 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 be precocious towards Ember. It would never work out, kid. And there's also Gale, who is the boss above both Wade and Fern. If you want to, who get her to help call off the citations, you need to regularly start the wave at the game that they're at, and show her a good time. And I'm also not the only one that's made this observation, but Wade himself also seems to be coded as neurodivergent, which is not a total stretch, being given what how the film portrays him, and the fact that he's also blue, a color often associated with awareness of the spectrum. I think it's easier to buy than for me and then Liko and Dot are. We'll talk another time. By the time of the film's finale, it becomes clear just how much impact that relationships, even no matter how different they can be, can connect with one another. Like these steps or pieces of a puzzle, they all fit together in their own ways, which I believe is a message that resonates with a lot of people, and I can definitely say I needed, given how I've seen the last few years some of a healing process, and one I hope can continue, and that more often than not, the world is a lot bigger than any one individual. Oh, oh, and how sometimes the simplest thing needed of a budding relationship is a spark to start a fire, and how often the simplest thing for family dynamics is a mutual understanding and earnesty. And that is definitely something that was made apparent in two phrases. The first would be right before the Vivisteria sequence I mentioned earlier, when Wade responds to Emma's concern by saying, "Why does everyone tell you get to do what you can do in your life?" And the realization when, after everything, they lose their blue flame, Hearth feeling the worst. And also Bernie realizes the same thing that Ember does, like the shop was never the dream, you were the dream, always. And it ends up being a bittersweet but ultimately beautiful finale as in order to truly find themselves, Wade and Ember end up having to leave the city on separate journeys of their own, and which is a recurring plot thread I've seen through a lot of their films towards the end of the 2010s, the start of this decade, but an ultimately hopeful one at that. Something of a goodbye for now, but not forever. After all, you never know what ship will come in next. So, this video took a bit longer to get out than I would have liked, but I'm glad to have it done, as this ranks among my favorite films of the past year, and another standout entry of this decade, and whatever happens with the upcoming Inside Out sequel, the upcoming next Toy Story, as well as the upcoming Elio, I definitely look forward to having a nice blend of both humor and heart that I kind of expect from them. And whether or not it comes my area, I still am very interested in seeing Soul look at and turning red theatrically after everything that's happened. Especially as the next movie I'm considering talking about is not going to be a fraction as good as this one. That'll be it for now. See you again soon. Toot toot. Mm.